So when we're looking at adding and subtracting fractions with uncommon denominators, we're going to start with adding. Okay, and so to combine or add, okay, we can consider it combining because we're putting numbers together. Now, fractions or subtract fractions, they must have a common denominator. Okay, so it means that they must have the bottom number, okay, needs to be the same, and this means that each fraction must be broken into the same number of sections. Okay, so it either has to be broken into 2, 4, 6, 5, 3, 1, 10, 100, 1 million, whatever we want to consider it, that number of sections. And we need that so that we can kind of subtract or add it evenly, and so we're adding the same thing, we're not adding something that's different. Okay, we're not just adding a number of pieces, we're actually adding the same types of things together. So to add these two fractions right here, we're going to follow the following steps. The first thing is we need to be sure that the denominators of the fractions are the same. Okay, and sorry, we're going to just get rid of that right there. That was a little typo. So we need to make sure that the denominators of the fractions are the same. So let's look at these two right here. We have 1/2 and 1/4, or 1/2 and 1/4. Now, if you look at that, are those denominators the same? Are the 2 and the 4 the same number? No. What that means is that if we were to be adding, let's say, pies together, food is just such a great thing to use for these courses here. What we would have is we would have one pie that has just 1/2 section and one pie that has 1/4 section. Now, if we're going to add these together, it's not just two pieces because the pieces are different sizes. We need to break the pieces into the same size. So in this case, it's fairly straightforward. What we would do is we would just cut that one again in half. Now it's in 4 sections. Okay? So, and we have 2 of them. One way to do this here is we can multiply each fraction by some integer to change it into something more equivalent. In this case here, if we were to multiply the denominator here by 2, we would get 4, which would mean this would become the same. So what we're doing there then is 1/2, and we're multiplying this by 2, and we're multiplying that by 2. Okay, which means that 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. Remember, 2/4 is an equivalent fraction to 1/2. And because of that, we can now add them. So this one here, which we saw here as well, is 2/4. And this one here, we don't actually even need to change because it's already in 4s. And so it becomes 1/4. Now, to add these together, they have the same denominator, so we can in fact add. So 2 plus 1 is 3, and the 4s, of course, stay the same. So as you can see by the diagram, we have 3 quarter pieces. So our answer is 3/4, or 3/4. Okay. So that just follows these here. So as the whole numbers are now broken into the same number of values, right? We broke, instead of it being in 2 pieces, it's now in 4 pieces. Okay. We can now add the numerators together just as we did in our, just as we did when they were the same, because they now are the same. Let's try a couple more examples here. These ones might be a little bit more difficult. So here we have 1/3 and 1/2. Now 3 and 2 are again different, and so we need to multiply it by something to make them the same. Sometimes, now it wasn't the case in this first example here, but if we multiply the two denominators together, so let's say multiply this one here by 2 and multiply this one by 3, we should get the same. So you notice how this one was multiplied by 2, which is the denominator there. This one's multiplied by 3, which is the denominator there. And so 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. So you'll notice that that is the same as 2/6. It's an equivalent fraction. This one here, 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times 2 is 6. So we have 3/6. That is an equivalent fraction to 1/2. These are the same fractions. They're just written out a little bit different so that they have the same number of pieces or the same number of sections. Now, once they're the same, we can add together. 2 plus 3 is 5, and that's all over 6. Now, 5/6 cannot be simplified. Remember, that's our last step if we're able to. So it cannot be simplified, so we leave it exactly like that, and we don't change it. Okay, that's how we're going to change it. We're going to keep it. Let's try another example. This one here. All right, 2 over 3 and 1 over 5. They're not the same, so we have to make them the same. So we're going to multiply this by 5, and we're going to multiply this by 3. Now again, this will always work. Sometimes we can make smaller fractions like here. Instead of multiplying by 4 and multiplying by 2, we can just multiply this one by 2 to make it 4. Okay, that works. 3 and 5 doesn't work like that. We just multiply it by 3 and 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 5 is 15, so we know that our common denominator is going to be 15. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 5 is 15. We're going to add those two together. 10 plus 3 is 13. And that's all over 15. Now 13 is a prime number and 15 cannot be divided by 13, so this in fact is simplest form, or in our lowest terms, so to speak here. Okay, so that's how we make sure that we always put it into lowest terms, or it's simplified. Those are two different ways to kind of say the exact same thing. All right, last one here, 4 over 7 and 1 over 4. Now you'll notice here the 7 and the 4 are not the same. They're really the simplest way, again, is to multiply this by 4 and multiply this by 7. Okay? That's one of the simplest ways to change them over. It's not necessarily always the easiest later on, but it is the simplest to start with, and it'll usually give you lowest terms right off the bat. You don't have to simplify your final fraction. But things aren't always that simple. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 7 is 28. And we're adding 1 times 7 is 7. 7 times 4 is 28. So you notice now that they have the same denominator, which is very important. 16 plus 7 is 23 over 28. Again, there is no number which you can divide into both 23 and 28. So that has become our simplified or final answer to the fraction there. So that is how we add fractions together. If you want to work on the next set of questions to work on are numbers 5 and 7 on the assignment. We will be doing number 6 a little bit later. It deals with subtraction. We're going to start with adding. So numbers 5 and 7 deal with adding. You can take a look at those.